welcome. This will be episode 9 of the series of getting a poor nation into the space age or a post nuclear hellscape into the space age, depending on how you want to view this one. After a nuclear war in the US, we'd have the living standards of Madagascar and the population of Madagascar, roughly speaking, like a few years, let's say, after the nuclear winter blows over. And I've just been informed of the death of, not Epstein, McAfee. I heard of it yesterday, but I wasn't paying much attention. So today I'll consider it to be truly informed. And far as I can tell, he was murdered, but there's no clear evidence one way or the other yet. In the Epstein case, after a few months, the evidence became overwhelming and it was clear that he was offed by the state. And this tends to happen when you don't give people an option when you attack them. These people who attack the IRS and the feds all make a similar mistake in that they simply want the Fed to make less money, and they don't offer the Fed or the IRS or what have you a chance to increase their power through cooperation with you. And as they are a very powerful organization, financially speaking, they will object to having that power be taken away unless it's an even more powerful organization, say the US Senate. And if you force powerful people to have their back on the wall with a gun to their head, when you say, if you come after my tax evasion, I'll release this database or what have you, you're gonna be attacked. And that's because our planet doesn't yet have the systems and laws in place that would ensure that no such thing is possible, and we won't have for a while. Perhaps in the 2030s, and I don't mean 2030, I mean 2300. Perhaps when we get a unified planetary government, a unified ego, an understanding of how the human mind works, and so on and so forth, we might be able to do this well. But the reality is that if you go after people, powerful or not powerful, and you don't give them a chance to redeem themselves while you go for them, they will come after you. Now, I hope that my example of how to get a large pile of money without putting yourself in that kind of situation proves the case that you can, in fact, get a large amount of money without technically cooperating or being opposed. Now, everybody knows I don't like large tax organizations. That's no secret. But my model accurately describes how by the both sides of this debate, the libertarians or liberals or what have you, and the conservatives or the IRS or the feds and what have you, working together would make more money for everyone. It's not a foolproof plan in that there is the possibility of people being laid off as the government condenses its functions and as the tax administration becomes less bulky and so on and so forth. But the reality is that in my model, the government can easily double its income, without harming the government's farm pile or the population, if you will. And that means that if they oppose my model, it has to be on ideological grounds instead of financial grounds. And that is somewhat alien to people whose driving motivation is greed or the desire to progress or what have you. And through that, I feel kind of safe. I understand that you can't go after the IRS and tell them that we don't want to be taxed at all, because they see that as saying that we don't need governments, and they have a lot of experience with what anarchism actually looks like I do. And I can tell you that you guys don't want anarchism. Trust me on that one. And you don't want corporate anarchism either. If you'd want that, you'd be in Eve and you'd be making your money there. You wouldn't be complaining to the people who actually run these government offices that you don't want government offices. You would be moving to the regions where there are no government offices. And I can already hear you guys saying that we don't like the living standard of Somalia. I'm not saying Somalia, I'm saying Iceland. I'm saying Eve. I'm saying become a billionaire in that system. And just, when you see the Christian conservatives farm $65 billion worth of cocaine while telling people that you can't farm cocaine, you can go to town on them, and the response will be much less than you'd expect. There will be a response, but it'll be much less than you expect. And these kinds of actions against government oversight or government over control or what have you have to be taken in a way that both sides benefit. If you simply attack one side, we already know what that is. You'll be going after the money badgers, if you will, and it'll look bad. So you can't just attack one side and say, these guys are in the wrong. The Nazis tried that and it didn't work for them either. Because if you go for just one camp and attack them, like say going after the LGBT community and take their possessions and fund your campaign and then move on, what the people know and are most worried is that when you run out of money again, you'll go after the next group. So they will support the IRS against you because they're afraid that they will be the next one after you successfully take out one group. Which is why, despite the IRS being, I wouldn't say universally disliked, but generally disliked, they will be protected by the community. And if you have the mindset of taking them out, you will notice that if you don't have an option of how they can maintain their wealth and power and perhaps have somebody else who is even more wealthy and powerful appear, but to be at least neutral to them, they will attack you. A lot of these fancy government conspiratorists who believe that you can attack one of these groups without consequence always forgets that we've been there. We've tried to attack the bankers first and then finance a world reform with the money you get from the banker attack and so on, but it didn't work, which is why your plan to attack the IRS openly won't work. What I have in my model here is a reasonable middle ground. We go through the system and we see what we can get from either side and find a new baseline in the middle with contributions from both sides. So it's not just taking the government and turning it into the private sector or having corporate anarchism or what have you, because you need to understand that these people are just as much people as you are. And for every John McAfee that dies, there's an IRS inspector that gets shot by somebody for just doing their job. So it's not that simple. So looking at my proposal here, I have radically diminished the number of laws and made the legal standard as loose as is possible. The deficit running is bugged for some reason. it says 21% deficit. But when we look at the debt, we can notice that even with the 21% deficit, the debt is going down steadily, which means that this number is bugged. Some of these are. Sometimes you don't get games that completely understand the weird structures that you want to put in place, but that doesn't mean that they don't, in theory, work. So the idea here is to lessen the control of laws, but pick one or two topics that tend to affect everyone, in this case, the value added tax, and go heavy on them, which means that every time you increase the value added tax, the general population becomes poorer. But if you use the money that you gained, because in this case, you can clearly see that the budget is increasing dramatically because the value added tax brings in a huge amount of income. You can use it to improve the life standard of your people, which then makes you even richer. And the number of civil servants is going up because there were things like one doctor for 3,000 people or something, and 1,000 people. And we actually need, to have doctors and basic services and so on. So we are taking from the population and the rich equally, and we are investing in things that everybody would benefit from, such as a clean environment, good education, good research, good culture, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that in my model, the super rich lose a lot of power, but they are compensated for it by getting a lot of income for the state, which then means that, for example, the company taxes go from the 20% range to 8%, which might be not supported by the population, but it lowered the unemployment, so that is supported by the population, so it balances out. If I were to just put a wealth tax and have it at like this, if I were to have this at 100% or some insane thing like that, or perhaps have an income tax on the rich be 50%, like in most Western countries, you could see that the rich would be opposed to that. Which reminds me, I actually need to have a tax on large wealth standing around, but it doesn't need to be as high as it was talked about. I'm thinking because interest rate is 7, inflation rate is 4, we could have a large fortune tax of even 1%, and it might be applicable, but that would be hard. So let's start with 0.1 and overrule. And let's see where we can actually place this. Okay, so we can have it at 20%, so that's too much. I'm thinking 1%, that would give you, if you have your money on even the government funded interest rate accounts, you would still be getting a 2% increase on your wealth every year. So that would be acceptable. As you can see, support from the population went up because they generally dislike rich people being super rich. Which reminds me, I need to continue my fixing of the housing in this country. It's a pretty low point. 93% or so of the houses were dilapidated or unsanitary, and now it's at 84, and it's taken about a year to get that low. This is going to take a while. I'm looking at when I have enough income to actually build one of these satellite launch centers, which is going to be a long time because that's damn expensive. But as the economy is growing at a pretty healthy rate at the moment, it's at 4% and it started at around 3%. We are getting some chance of getting the space center built within a reasonable time frame. For now, building one space center would be the entire national GDP, so we can't do it. There's also some wars in the background. Let's see if our friends in South Africa have anything they want to share with us. Employers syndicate, 600 people protesting. I understand that you're protesting, but we're still giving you a pretty good deal.
Good morning.
Let's see what you're offering. No, it's way too high. Let's try 9.5, 0.95. Okay, that's good. That's 8 billion.
Sure.
This is still not real world money because I have a standing bet with any taxation agency. If you can actually help me to find where this money is legal and where I can make more of it legal, you get your standard cut of it. So it's not just me mocking you that I'm moving my money in ways that you can't understand. I'm just looking at this and wondering if these plot holes in the financial system are things that we can universally understand that aren't a good idea. And we can tax the imagination of people, if you will. Because this is just make-believe or imagination. And if we can find where this money is actually real, you get your cut. If you prove it's mine, give me the bulk, you get like 25%. Instead of having like a stupid war over imagination. My idea is that as Bitcoin advances, we will eventually have...
Hello? Hi.
We will eventually have a economic system where everybody's imagination is mined for currency. So when you create an imaginary world, say, Narnia, you will have a system like a mining apparatus that will see how much of your electrical power is going towards that in your mind, how many people are connected to it, how large your imagined realm is, and you get a cut of it. So you don't have to worry about real world economics. You don't have to worry about selling your real world economic thing and having your imagination be something that you need to sell. You just need to imagine, and people will give you money for your imagination because the resources there are for the liberal market to be valued. So eventually, in a couple of perhaps decades, perhaps 100 years, we will have a system where you can literally write a story and be paid for the story even if no one ever reads it. But something on the real world quick scale, where this can happen in a matter of decades instead of centuries, would be nice. These guys are protesting the budget deficit, which is weird because I'm actually at a budget surplus. But,
We are in a dead end.
No, thank you.
For the moment.
I'll probably play until December. I could have emergency laws or martial law in effect that stops the sit-in protests, but that's not something I want. Only if it gets to 2 days or so of rioting or worse will I intervene. As you can see, people are protesting for a few days and then the protest dies down. Somebody informs them that despite us publicly running a deficit, the reality is that we are able to fund everything we want and the national debt is going down. So but I'm not worried at the moment. Yes, I will give you encouragement. I hope it works. As the UN says that we need to intervene, we will intervene. Aha. It's a smaller protest than it was a couple of days ago. It seems to be dying down. Oh, it's still increasing. Go home. You know that it's not a budget deficit. And it's gonna go so that the police can't control them. And then they're gonna ask for the military to step in, and then the military is gonna step in. Then there's gonna be a couple of hours or days of discordance in the country, and then it's gonna die down. There we go. The religious laws are all good. Education needs a little bit more effort. Classroom size is still way too large. The literacy is going down, but this one is a stuck slider, I think. It doesn't seem to be moving. Could be that the schools are full, but if that were the case, it would be going down due to population growth. Some of these sliders are clearly stuck, but you make do with what you have, not what you'd want to have. Oh, improved fighter jet, first generation. And because it's a military thing, I think it needs, no, it doesn't need a minister to be there. We will patent it and sell it abroad. If somebody in the country actually manages to start a fighter jet construction company, which I seriously doubt. Nope, no fighter jet construction. I'm giving a, where is it? There, I'm giving a sizable subsidy to satellite construction, but it's not going anywhere because even with the subsidy, nobody's starting any companies. We're still too primitive.
This person is at risk of a scandal. The least that can be said is that the affair is likely to damage the government's image in proportions that are difficult to calculate.
Even using chaos bonds.
Of course, you can always suggest that they resign. Otherwise, would you like us to try and stifle this unfortunate story?
Well, this seems to be the McAfee case and our involvement and our view of the theory, and it becoming something of a scandal because we're kind of telling you that if you go fighting against windmills with a horse, you may end up getting slapped in the head. And there are some dark connections that I'd rather not disclose at this time. But this means that if I accept, they will try to keep it hidden, and that is more damage to the media and the perception that the public deserves to know. So no, I don't want to stifle the story. Ministers keep resigning because I'm not having like government meetings and such. I'm just occasionally adjusting some things and then going back into the countryside to golf and see how the government grows. Ooh, apple tanked. Let's see if it comes back to the high level. Oh, that's unfortunate. I don't have a clear idea of why. Probably the wealth tax, actually. It tends to have that kind of effect. New taxes tend to slow down growth and then make everybody poorer, which is kind of what the God Emperor in Warhammer said about laws. Once people adjust to it, it'll start growing again, but for a while it will be negative. There's like an initial panic when a new law is set. People switch their money around and wait for a while to see what others do and what the trends are, and then get back into the market. If it's 3 months, then the law was probably a bad idea. We'll see. %1 of your wealth is taxed every year with an interest rate of 7 and an inflation rate of 4. So I think you'll be fine with it. We didn't get any medals at the swimming competition, which is no great surprise because we don't yet have a lot of stuff.
The funeral will take place next week. Do you want to attend the ceremony?
Actually, I will take responsibility for the drop in the economic growth. I'm using the shadow government option, so I always embody the next leader. We'll soon get the next month's budget review in. If it's negative, then certainly we will repel the large income tax or the large wealth tax. If I recall correctly, we get it on the 1st of the 10th. And here's what the various world governments think of me. Most are in the green, some are in the light red, but nobody's dark red or dark green, so they aren't really allied with us or against us. Some just dislike us and some just like us, but there's nothing major. Is the economic growth stabilizing? No, it's going down. So that wealth tax seemed like a bad idea. Probably because foreign investments are running away from the country. I think I might actually want to increase the number of government sector workers so I can build more houses. Urbanization rate is also going down because we don't have enough houses. Slowly increasing. That's the drop from the wealth tax. It's too much. It's way too much. Let's wait until the budget review comes in and drop it into perhaps 0.5% and see what happens. I agree completely. 84% of the houses are uninhabitable. Traditional mud huts, which is a damn high percentage. We'll have to wait until the debt is like almost 50% of GDP until we can start something large again, like building a new highway or in this case a faster speed train network. The port is taking a year and a half to build, so it's still under construction. We will see about building an airbase and ordering a few fighters once networks connecting all the major cities. Then once the fighters and the other military stuff are at with, we'll see about building a communications base so we can keep track of everybody in our airspace and get ready to have the satellite center, because you can't really launch satellites unless you can keep track of said satellites. And then perhaps increase the education and other sliders more, and then once those are at a good level would be defined as all the sliders going towards the positive. Hello there, President of Paraguay. Even with this fairly high healthcare level, where this one is decreasing because it's going with population growth. So we need to build more hospitals soon, but let's build houses first. Once this one starts to go down, we will see that it is a good level. But that will take some time. It's the last slider to change. The HIV pandemic is a really hard bug to kill. We were at perhaps 2 out of 10 when we started, and we're now at 7 out of 10. So the large wealth tax was not a good idea. And the country's farming base is nowhere near enough to support the population that
Good
now
morning.
can actually afford food. The farming base is not at a good place. Let's try 394. Okay, that's good enough. 40 billion. I'm trying to connect all of these to a. There we go.
Good news. I'll find it.
I'm trying to connect all these numbers so we have an understanding of how, when I change one slider in one game, it affects the other games. So I can have like a hive mind that understands where the money is flowing, and then we can start talking about taxes to the people when it becomes real money instead of just, weird electrical grids. Okay, that's not a good idea. Let's try this. You were right, Mr. Parliament. Let's reduce value-added tax by 1 again. And then do the housing. Next time I'm gonna build hospitals and schools, but let's fix housing some more. Damn, that is a lot of dilapidated houses. How much is this to full? Okay, it's still pretty cheap. These cheap budget items get to full first. Closest developed country. And on the
bill has been.
on the technological development and spying front, it's actually increasing my efficiency when I do the full boosting of the secret services, and that's kind of like research at this point. Heavy fine. for the scandal. Ah, they weren't meeting me. I thought they were meeting me, but they're actually going to war with someone. Jordan as well. Ah, the point is constructed. I will attend. This should desperately increase our situation of our trade and perhaps even allow a immigration to appear because we didn't have immigration. No, we still don't have immigration. That's probably once again a stock slider. Population growth is down. This is still going up. Fertility rate is going up. People are emigrating, but birth rate is still going down. And contraception rate is almost at 100.
Here is our growth forecast.
So the tax on large fortunes really killed the economy. Because I'm not doing anything to meet anybody and lowering the large wealth for taxation caused people to protest its antisocial nature. But more than the tiny bit of wealth we get from taxing large fortunes, we really need the 4% economic growth. This, I hope, shows what will happen if we go with, I suppose you could call it, the green agenda and tax the large fortunes heavily. You're going to kill the economy. And before you say it's good for the environment, let's take a look at what I'm doing for the environment. It's going down. And Israel got the UN to turn against them, even the US. Temperature is going down. Based on the rate of the GDP's actual growth, it doesn't seem like the growth rate is 2%. But we'll see what it says after it updates properly, because that drop means that it's counted year to year. And if you look at the data from the start of the year, then yeah, that might be 1%. Perhaps we will build a new train connection when it gets to like 30%. And now it's showing a surplus in the screen there. How is our energy network doing? Still, we managed to peak above consumption while we were building a lot of wind and solar. But due to our network becoming almost dependent on wind and solar, we can't build more of it. Europe is fighting among itself again. Seems like the old times are back. And I think we can actually build one of these. It's a minuscule increase in the production of electricity, but at least it's varied instead of a single source. Once the wind becomes complete, this wind production will be greater than the solar production, I think, but can't be sure. We're trying to increase these other aspects. We could build a nuclear, but it would be the entire GDP of the place, so that's not a good idea. And at this point, we might actually want to build hospitals. How many social centers? More than 60. That seems okay. It's too much. That seems okay. That seems okay. Put the rest into housing. Actually, yeah, that's going to increase my deficit by quite a bit, though, because those hospitals were expensive. Might even end up taking debt this cycle. Increased a little bit, but not still cheaper than one rail network. It's one of them high-speed train networks. I think we might be able to afford the space center by 2034, like I expected. We're aiming to have it in 20 years of, after 20 years of improving the country, to have a space center. That might be possible. We're already almost at the level where we have a telecommunication satellite, but it's not launched by us, so I wouldn't count that. Yeah, that really spiked when I built the hospitals. That was about as costly as one great train network. But we doubled the number of hospitals, so that's good. Still, like 50 hospitals for a population of 30 million isn't that much. It's almost like 1 million people per hospital. That wasn't a real number. Wonder why the fertility rate is increasing while birth rate is going down. Perhaps we should assume that the fertility rate refers to number of sexual partners. The way this math is being worked, that might very well be true. We get another energy drink. I'm trying to get my own apartment, but it'll take a while. The apartments in the Lapland country of Finland, in the region of Lapland, only cost around 10,000 euros. And the rent for this place, which is 14 square meters, one of those apartments was 55 to 85 square meters for 10 grand. And the rent for this place is 800 a month. So I'm actually tempted to go homeless again and then save enough money, but that would be a little harsh. Might be a little on the rough side. Perhaps couch surf for half a year and then buy the apartment. We'll see. If I was really the financial tax evader, I wouldn't be living in a 14 square meter apartment for 800 a month. I would have something else. It's fun to pretend that you're a billionaire on Eve, but reality is always reality. It's reporting 12% surplus. These numbers are really bad at keeping in mind the weirdness of my tax structure. They really don't catch up to it. I'm gonna wait until I get the next budget estimate in, and if it still shows that low level of growth with the wealth tax, I might even decrease it to 0.1. I will attend Christmas. I hope I can get all the unhealthy housing to healthy housing. Oh, again? You guys keep electing popes that die quick. I hope I can get the unhealthy housing to healthy housing in, let's say, 3 years. It's not gonna happen, but at least before I start thinking of the space center. Technically, we could build a space center and max out the value added tax and pay back the debt in like 5 years, but that would be a little silly when most people live in mud huts. It would be Elon Musky in a bad way. Seems like it's not climbing up. So the wealth tax was a bad idea.
Good morning.
Let us see what Senegal offers. Way too expensive. Let's try that. No, too expensive. Let's try that. Still too expensive. There we go, 30 billion.
Sure.
And I won't complain about human rights yet, because we don't have a good human rights situation either. One of the best indicators that I have is how low the crime rate is now. It's gone down a lot. Drug addiction rate is basically zero. Violent deaths is still decreasing sharply, which also incidentally ended the public protests about the lax gun laws. They were protesting lax gun laws pretty strongly because, well, there were a lot of people dying on violent deaths. And this is slowing down its decline, but it's going well, which is interesting considering this because most street fatalities happen in cities. The speed limit in cities is very low, and the cities are reserved for public transport. And the next largest group of deaths is in the trunk road, so it's actually also very low, but motorways are ridiculously high. Oh, nothing this time around. Adrian the 7th. What is the actual number? Social contributions and such, but it ended up increasing poverty. So that's not a good idea at the moment. I could increase them a little bit and it continued to lower the poverty rate, but not as much as I would have hoped. I think based on this, if you calculate from this and extrapolate for the whole year, then that is certainly not 2%. It's much better than that. So I think I'll retain the wealth tax. I like that it increased unemployment because our unemployment is ridiculously low. You can also increase unemployment by increasing the corporate tax, but that didn't seem like a good idea because they're already like fairly high, even though they're quite low. But having a wealth tax kind of fits with what I'm going for here. The idea that if you just have a large amount of money you're doing nothing with, and not investing in anything or doing anything with, just seems a little redundant. Seems like Scrooge McDuck level thing.
Here are the GDP and
1766. Down. The next budget estimate, I think, comes in a few months. This has gone down nice. Yes, you guys will be the next ones to get the update. I had to go with health first due to the HIV pandemic and trying, to control it. Doesn't work, but we'll try. It's hard to, in a poor country where people can't afford food, to have people eat like 3 different pills at 3 different times a day. It's pretty hard because the HIV meds are also incidentally quite expensive.
here is our
There
growth
we
forecast.
go. The growth rate is now at a good point. I'm gonna play until I think April 1st, then I'm gonna switch to European Universalis. I'm getting a lot of interesting chatter in the Astral about my new model for Scandinavia. The Swedish government fell. They might actually stand up and not require a new election, but it looks like they will. Looks like the thought of changing ever so slightly to go with, I suppose we could, support the Nordic Council a little bit more was enough. I'm not going to propose that we form a union under any kind of legal framework. I'm just saying that maybe give 10 million to the Nordic Council more than you normally do. That ought to be enough. Then when we get in the game the Baltic countries as well, then perhaps Nordic Baltic 8. These overlapping organizations like the European Council or the Council of European Nations, which also includes countries like Russia and Ukraine and UK and such, are actually the best way to go about forming a super union. They don't make binding laws, they make recommendations like, we could all adopt this and we would make this much. So we are larger than Armenia in terms of economy. It's good. We'd need to be about the size of, let's say, Portugal or perhaps Belgium. Belgium is super rich, so we're not going to get there. But let's say Portugal to have the space center. Something on the order of large enough. I really wish that you could put always devote workers to this field instead of having to manually click it every few hours, or in this case, a few weeks. What are you complaining about? Your budget is quite large. I don't know why these budget reports are so weird. This is from December to January, so we did the math and it turns out our defense budget is 4%. And this is not a real defense budget number, unless they really are at war with everybody. Let's see. Seems like that war calmed down. Israel spending 60% on the US on the military defense seems a little wild. I wish that this game had a good modding crew, because the game developers themselves never really see the nice, Iceland is saying hi. The game developers themselves never really see like what their game can do, regardless of the game. They don't see how it can be the most beautiful that it can be. They just kind of see a product, but the real fans see what it can actually be. And Estonia, we're getting the Baltics and Scandinavians tricky. So a good modding group to like really go through this thing, correct all the bugs, do all the work would be nice beyond belief. I think we can repair the houses again. No. How about the health and retirement? Are these done? Yeah, these are done. This is very good. No effect on the HIV rate. Also no effect on life expectancy or child mortality. These are all very nice numbers. This will start to plateau off pretty soon because we reach what we can actually buy from the world market for our healthcare services, and then we need to develop new things. But for a while, a poor country can do a lot. Let's go with around half. Oh, that's good. 67 billion.
Sure.
I know. If we get this model to work, we have a good idea of how long it would take for any country to recover from a full nuclear war.
Good
So
morning.
if it's 20 years back into space age or 20 years into space age with a poor country, we might have a shot. That's 27 billion. It's good, but when you look at this, you realize how badly we're actually doing. Importations are increasing rapidly, but exports are increasing much more rapidly. Importations are increasing more rapidly than exportations. And if you look at these different branches of services, you can see that services trade balance is going up. Industry trade balance is, I think it's also going up. No, it's going down a slight bit, but look at the farming. Whoop. Even though our sales are going up and our profits are going up, productivity index is going up wildly, and so on and so forth. And even like how high the manpower used by the field is going up. There is no way that this kind of domestic growth or domestic market activity can subsidize the food that people are eating, because they can now actually afford food. So the farming can't increase at the speed that the consumption of food increases when you take the country and turn it back into like modern age. So that might be a problem with a post-nuclear apocalypse scenario, which also proves that after nuclear war, the countries not involved in the war might want to grow a lot of food. Instead of trying to do complex things like rapidly switch over to production of like IT technology, they might just want to build food, like lots and lots of food. Because it turns out repairing like an oil refinery is not as hard as turning like 30% of your country into farmland without access to the international trade, because you don't have anything to sell. So if like the northern hemisphere went to war and a country like, or a region like Africa or a country like Brazil just went like, this is a good opportunity to farm a little, they would make a lot of money. That's what this model is telling us. Like industry is going up, services are going up, even domestic food production is going up. But since people have money to, buy food, imports of food are going through the roof. We could subsidize the farming sector, but I don't really want to do that. I want to increase education so we get better farming technology natively. A crisis. Drought. I know it's not much, but here have $1 million. That's 2 million. We're rich enough to help you a little bit now, but not much. Keeping in mind, we still get donations from other countries on the order of 350 billion a year. Sounds like a lot, but our value-added tax brings in 18 trillion a year. So it's not that much. As we increase our development and become a rich country, the foreign investments are going to slowly decrease, or the foreign aid is going to decrease. I don't know about the investments, they seem to be increasing as we get richer. So there's the downward spike from the large wealth tax. We lost about 6 months due to the people scurrying about and not investing because they don't know how the market works now. I was thinking it might be a few months, but 6 months was what it took.
The budget deficit.
Slowly increases as we build houses and repair houses and need like momentary financial things like a quick boost to something, or like construction costs when we don't have like a bank account where we store our extra money because we have debt. So the debt goes up when we build something, and then once we get the 3-month budgetary estimate in, the debt goes down again. So that's like a credit card account, if you will, for the government. The gist of the model is pretty simple. Increase value-added tax, remove entire tax categories where possible, and when not possible, reduce corporate tax. Corporate tax reduction will decrease the unemployment, and once you have a small unemployment contribution, so you don't have to pay as much in social services and such, you will save a fair bit of money. If you invest that into things like education and welfare or healthcare, you're going to end up having a larger economic growth. And then you can at the same time start to pay back your debts, which will give you an even more higher number of money in your account, a higher balance, and then you can start thinking of large-scale investment projects. That's what I'm going for here. I would assume the government ministers have a lot of micromanaging they can do, even when the government prime minister or what have you doesn't really take interest. There's a lot of small work you can do. Thought I gave you that order already. So we weren't at a shortage of hospitals. That didn't help the HIV situation. We'll probably allow the life expectancy to grow a little bit larger with the increase in number of hospitals, because there's a different party running things. The country's opinion of our policies changed. Still, most of them are in the light green, so they kind of like what we're doing. I was thinking of starting a VAT reform alliance, but this game's alliance function is kind of bugged. So if it doesn't get like a new country into the alliance in like 3 days, it disbands the alliance because you're the only one in it. So like I said, there's a lot of bugs you have to kind of sort of tolerate. No, thank you. Let's see what this is. Now these are balanced. It's good. Let's build this. That's gonna take a lot of time. About 100 months, so that's gonna be maybe 10 years. And here's gonna be the budget estimate, I think. Nice, we still have a surplus. We need a Minister of Economics. Ideally, we'd have no taxes and all the money we make is from government-owned industries, but that's not yet possible. Okay. Health is at 8 stars. No, it's at Yeah, 7 stars, but education is at 8. Yeah. So let's do this. This is gonna end up being quite expensive, but we should have enough money for it. If we get about $1 billion every 3 months, we should have enough money for this. And a lot of this, when you invest into higher domestic services, you will get a return of investment. This seems to be slowing slightly. There's the infamous population explosion spike. Too expensive. I think I'm gonna play until the next budget estimate also comes in.
morning. No thanks.
The funeral will take. I was. I'd like.
Ethiopia, I think.
morning. No thank.
That was a fair deal at the beginning, so no need to haggle. That deserves to be a public sphere or public domain invention. It's beneficial for everyone.
Good morning. I didn't. No thanks. I have nothing to learn from so.
Everything.
Good news.
Okay, slowing down.
The bill has been voted on.
Funeral?
Business.
Okay. That seems to be about it for this gameplay. Next up is connecting this city to this city with train. This will be expensive because it's a long one, but I think we're doing pretty well. National consumption is still outrunning production, but not as much as when we started. Let's do this before we quit. It's going pretty well, but the military still can't afford like the things I wanted to have. That's because we're still dirt poor, but at least we got something. Starting to look like it might be possible to have the space entered by 34. We're now 6 years into the game and we've played for about a month or so, maybe a few months. So it looks like this will be done by the end of the year. That's usually how long making any kind of model or something takes on the international stage. So it's not appalling, but not good either. The Magna Mundi is going to take a few years minimum. By the time it completes, I should have my own apartment. Starting to look like we can't reduce the value-added tax anymore because we are going to implode the economy if we continue to reduce it while our surplus isn't even 1 trillion every 3 months. So that's about it. It looks like we might be able to get this done by 2034, but we don't know. So thank you for watching.